please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
We're the last two on the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Ziegler,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Beagle,
Here.
Councilmember Gottschall.
Here.
Councilmember Brenlin Fox. Here. Councilmember Leader,
Here.
Councilmember Resnick,
Here.
Councilmember Smiling,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes,
Mr.
Your
Brown?
Honor, per my request, I'd like to have the conceptual review presentation that's scheduled at the front of the council agenda pulled from the agenda for today. After having a conversation with legal counsel on that, decided not to proceed with that at this time.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the,
Anybody up here? I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting of March 26, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Anybody have any changes that they want to make, any errors that were found or omissions? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the regular city council meeting minutes of March 26, 2019. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Next item on the agenda, there is no correspondence. Next item on the agenda is the first call to the public. Read the rules for public speaking. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing council, and all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Having said that, is there anybody here that would like to make any public comments relative to agenda items?
Question about the agenda. As much as you took the item off.
Why don't you come up and identify
Is that
yourself?
okay?
For the record, I think we all know who we are.
Members of council, administrative staff, members of the public. My name is Mike Dornan, and I reside at 2192 Ettingham Boulevard, Wixom, Michigan. I'm just checking the time here. My question is it, in as much as the item that I'm here for was taken off the agenda, is now an appropriate time to speak, or do I have to stay through the whole meeting? And it's not that I don't want to hear the budget presentation, because I believe in looking at the budget, you got an outstanding budget. And your budget, you're flush, you got money coming in, you're spending it prudently, like you have over the last 20 years. And I would imagine you'd only have one study session on the budget. But those are my budget comments, but I'm not here for the budget. So can I make my comments, and can the others in the public make comments about the item on the agenda? Or do you want us to stick around for the whole meeting? Which wouldn't hurt us. A lot of us need finance lessons.
Well, I don't, I guess my thought on it would be that it's off the agenda. It's not an agenda item any longer.
Yeah, it is.
And
Right.
I think that what you need to do is wait for the second call to the public.
Okay.
Why?
Because that's
I think that's
kind of the
fair.
rules of the game.
No, my question is, why is it off the agenda? I think everybody'd like to know.
Well, as far as I can tell, based on what Mr. Brown just said, on the advice of council, it's been taken off the agenda.
That's
Beyond that, I'm not prepared to expound.
Can the gentleman here expound?
Well, we'll have to ask the attorney if you'd like.
Why?
So I'm Tim Wilhelm from Rosati Schultz.
Can't hear you. Sir.
Tim Wilhelm from Rosati Schultz. We reviewed the matter. We believe reviewing the agenda was not appropriate to proceed with council.
That's still not an answer. Why?
That's the answer.
That's pretty thin.
That's the answer.
That's pretty thin.
Okay.
So all these people are here for that answer?
No, we're here for nothing.
Well, let's try to get some order back here. If Mr. Dorner, if you're done, if you'd like to come up and ask the questions and identify yourself, it's
Question
fine.
was answered. There is no
Okay.
answer.
All right. So please stick around, and if you want to talk to the public, at the second call to public, please do. Next item, anybody else have any comments on agenda items only? I'll close the first call to the public. Next item on the agenda are the city manager's reports. We have two. One is the fire monthly report, February 2019. Any questions of that report by council members? The next item is the police monthly report from February 2019. Anybody? Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless the council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Unfinished business. We have a recommendation to enact an ordinance to amend the Wixom Code of Ordinances, Title 15, Business Licenses and Regulations, and add a new Chapter 5.30, Wireless Facilities in right-of-way to establish requirements, standards, and regulations for public right-of-way access and use. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Brown, do you want to give us, for the record, a synopsis of this?
Right, so we had a item on our agenda at the last council meeting on March 26th where we discussed the introduction of an ordinance to amend the Wixom Code of Ordinances in relation to these requirements, standards, and regulations for public right-of-way access and use. And this relates to some law that was passed at both the state and federal level that was really conducive to new situations coming into play for cities to have to deal with certain new situations with wireless antennas and wireless facilities that would be attached to poles being present in areas that had not been the case previously because of the way that service is provided in a different fashion currently and is anticipated to be changing in that way in the future as well. So we had the introduction take place at the last meeting. Mayor and council had a discussion about it. There was some discussion of specific questions relating to 40-foot heights and 50-foot heights and what's preferable and whether the choice of one height or the other would have an impact on the number of facilities that would be required and things of that nature. Had lots of discussions with the city attorney staff on the subject over the last couple of weeks to try to come up with a good amount of clarity on that, and I would summarize my efforts as unsuccessful. I don't think that there is a great deal of clarity on this. I think that the idea that we have in front of us is to adopt a regulation of this situation by enacting this ordinance change for ourselves to address this situation as best we can with the current information that we have and recognize that we'll likely have to make changes on it as further information may or may not come to light in the future. But the recommendation from legal counsel is to proceed with an enactment today based on what was presented to you in the package. And we also have Tim Wilhelm here from the law firm to answer questions that might come up during the course of the discussions on this enactment proposal before you tonight. So that's my introduction to that.
Yeah, as I understand it, there are federal regulations that have been put out, and there are state regulations that have been put out. They're in conflict with one another, and this ordinance attempts to address the issue, trying to take those regulations into consideration, but is a pretty fluid situation with this technology. Is that pretty much correct? I guess, Mr. Wilhelm?
Correct. So the ordinance as presented tries to work this in because these facilities would be located within the right-of-way. You treat them as you would a typical right-of-way permit. It establishes a variety of standards, permitting process, review procedures, criteria. The criteria that the city should be most focused on are the aesthetic, location, spacing requirements. The height limits are set respectively by the federal and state statutes, and the ordinance presented contains various spacing, concealment measures, and co-location requirements or preferences.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Mr. Gotchel?
Not necessarily a question, other than to just comment, in the packet, the way we received that with what had been presented, then the red line changes, and then what was done was probably the cleanest we've ever received something, so I really like that. It was helpful.
Anybody else?
Just to add, there's a lot more to come as more and more of these wireless devices are put into right-of-ways when the 5G and as well as the connected vehicle stuff comes into fruition. So a lot more to come, and we probably will have to amend it at some point down the road.
Okay. Anybody else? Any comments? We have a motion and a second to enact an ordinance to amend the Wixom Code of Ordinances, Title 15, Business Licenses and Regulations, to add a new chapter 5.30, Wireless Facilities in right-of-way, to establish requirements, standards, and regulations for public right-of-way access and use. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Next is new business. First item on the agenda is the submittal of the city manager's proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 budget and setting May 28, 2019 as the date of the public hearing regarding the budget. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Oh, I guess we don't need a motion for that, do we? Do we do? Okay. To set the public hearing. Right, okay. We have a motion to set the public hearing. And you wanted to make a presentation. Did you get a second, Kathy, on that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just to begin with, Your Honor, there's been a lot of work going on among city administrative staff over these past few months to get the proposed 2019-20 budget put together for mayor and council consideration, beginning with tonight where we submit the proposed budget. There's a April 15th scheduled budget work session for our first budget work session. A second is scheduled on the following Monday on April 22nd. Again, a second budget work session will be held on that date. And then the date of May 28th, 2019 is the public hearing date that we're looking to establish through your action tonight. And also the adoption of the budget would be before the council for action at that point in time as well. We've got what I think is a very good budget to basically prioritize what I think the purpose of the city of Wixom is. And to my understanding, what mayor and council's goal is for the city is to provide the highest level of quality services possible as efficiently and effectively as we can to residents, to businesses, and visitors to Wixom. And I think that this budget is reflective of that goal and does a good job of balancing out the priorities that we have for service delivery with the fiscal resources that are available to us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Finance Director, Marilyn Sanford, to begin with a presentation that she has, which will hopefully be very helpful to understanding the budget as proposed for this year coming up.
Okay, you have a PowerPoint presentation in front of you, and it's also up on the monitors for everyone else in the room. Sorry that some of the writing is a little small. It's hard to fit some of these charts onto a presentation because there is a lot of information that we try to put into it. The first item that I'd like to cover is we had another favorable year of taxable value increases due to development and the normal increase of CPI on the existing homes or additions that they made to their homes or upgrades and things of that nature. We're seeing an estimated increase across the board of about 5.99%, and those changes relate to a 7.96 increase in residential property values, a 5.78% on the commercial, 6.92 on industrial, and about 1.35% on personal property. We continue to see kind of a slow growth on the personal property because the industrial personal property is slowly weaning off as we lose those to the reimbursement method from the local community stabilization authority. Such a long word. So this year on that industrial manufacturing personal property, we're losing, what fell off is the 2008 properties. Anything that entered the roll in 2008 has now become exempt and is falling off the personal property tax rolls. So in that category, we see about a 15.22% decrease, and that decrease will come gradually over the next couple of years, and eventually that property will be gone. Our composition of our city's tax base is about 41.74% commercial and industrial, 42.89 residential, and about 13.83 of personal property, and the remainder of 1.54% of special taxes such as industrial facility tax. In this budget, the city millage rate is proposed at 13.2429, and that would be a millage rate that would compose all of the millages that we place on properties. This reflects a reduction of 0.78 mils, which last year the level was 14.0229. The reduction is 0.28 mils of the water utility system debt millage, and that is because we're reducing the debt millage we need to collect because it's the final year of collection for that bond payment. So we can expect to see next year that that millage will completely go away. We're also doing a 0.5 reduction in the general operating millage of the special voted millage that we had been levying the 3.5. We're able to reduce that down to 3 this year. Down below, you'll see a snapshot of the millage rate history that shows basically the gradual changes that we've shown in our millage rate throughout those years. Again, we compared with 31 cities total in Oakland County, our proposed rate. We fall about the 10th lowest on that scale, and those millage rates range from 8.3229 to 39.0343. And as far as revenues are concerned, this budget reflects a decrease of about $161,000, just shy of that, or a 1.3429% decrease when we compare that to the fiscal year 18-19 estimated figures. The largest things that make that up are a slight reduction in the tax revenue. Even though we have the increase in taxable values due to the reduction of the millage, we're going to see a slight decrease in that millage or in that tax collection. We're also showing about a $53,000 decrease in our local community stabilization revenue, or I'm sorry, about a $93,000 decrease in the local community stabilization revenue, and about a $39,000 increase in our state revenue sharing. Other than that, we've got building permit fees. We're kind of scaling off on those because we've seen in the last part of this year, we're seeing kind of a slowdown in people coming in and pulling permits. So we scaled that number down a little bit. We're still including some revenue in there, but we're just not being we're being a little bit precautious when we budget that number. And that number directly relates to the expense that we see on the Safe Built side for our building official expenses. So where they collect a certain percent of that. So there's a large offset to that revenue also. We're also going to see this year an increased contribution from the DDA for the repayment of the debt that we've been covering for them. We're able to budget that at $173,151, and we anticipate that'll take about 3 years for the final repayment, and then that revenue will drop off. So the next slide is just kind of shows some history of our state revenue sharing. Like I said in the previous slide, we're expecting an increase of about $39,680 in our state revenue sharing. If we compare that back to fiscal year 2002-2003, we were at about $1.468 million, and today we're at $1.284. So, which is about $183,000 decrease in that long of a time span. If we look at that cumulative, we've seen a decrease of about $5.9 million over that period of time.
So just to clarify that a little bit, if we were at 2002, 2003 levels throughout that 17-year period, we would receive an additional $6 million nearly over that time period, which that's the kind of hit that we absorbed from state shared revenue cuts over those years. It's on the right trend. Over the last few years, it's trending upward, but we're still below the levels that we experienced in 2002, 2003, and we're never going to recover that. It'll be much greater than $6 million by the time we ever get back to that 2002, 2003 level.
Yeah, and I think that wasn't the annual average, like 300-some thousand?
Right.
Approximately, if you divide it out over those 17 years.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
About 338,000, if I recollect, would have been additional money on an annual basis the city would have had to have spent over those years if we had been at that 2002, 2003 level.
With the 2002, 2003 obviously being so much higher, and that's where the chart starts for us. I mean, what was revenue looking like in prior years?
The revenue would have been a little bit lower. We utilized that high year. That was the highest state revenue.
Okay.
Much like our current experience where it's building, it's probably building up to that level of 2002, 2003 when it began dropping.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So the next slide goes over expenditures, and what we're seeing this year is we're showing an expenditure increase of 26.08%, or about $2.9 million, and we'll get into a little bit more some of the items that make up that increase on the next slide. But overall, there's mostly general increases from department to department. We had a 2.5% wage negotiation that we have built into this budget for the next 2 years, some fringe benefit changes, and just general overall differences between, since we're comparing our new budget to the proposed, the estimated actual of 2018, typically every year you do come in a bit lower than what you budgeted. So when you're comparing to those estimated actual, they automatically are going to be a little bit lower than what we're requesting in the budget. So this gives you kind of some further detail of a lot of these different line items. There's a lot of variables of why things changed the way they did. But we'll go to the next slide to look at some of the major items that are making up this differential. In this budget, of that $2.9 million, we have included a major road contribution of $1.8 million to address a couple road projects. And we're also requesting additional capital improvement contribution of $773,000. And then also, and we'll talk about those a little later in the slides, we have a little more detail on those. And then also the pension OPEB payment for those bonds that we issued last year. There is an increase in that payment from compared to what we actually paid last year, just because of the timing of the bond and the amount of interest we paid in that first year. We're going to be paying more interest in the second year because it'll capture a full fiscal year of payment activity. Then we also, in this budget, have a request for 2 additional staff members for police and DPW. And then the remainder of it is those miscellaneous difference that I talked about previously, the wage increases that are in the bargaining units and other miscellaneous changes just from how we're comparing to estimated actual from the prior year. So in this budget, although we did do the bonds for the OPEB and the pension liabilities, we still have to realize the normal cost for those 2 plans. And what the normal cost is for the future time that's accrued by the employees that are eligible under this plan. When you bond, you're only allowed to bond for the unfunded liability portion, which is the time that's already been served or the retirees that you already have. So in this budget, we continue to budget for the normal cost of the OPEB for about $172,000, and also the normal cost of pension for about $216,000. The bonding process, we now have to create 2 new departments, so you'll see that within your general fund, and that will house the activity of those bond payments that we make each year. Our general fund reflects an estimated balance at the close of this proposed budget of fiscal year 1920 of about $2.182 million. And like I stated before about the DDA, the new development and construction across the street has allowed a larger capture of taxes for the DDA. So they are able to not only cover their debt payment that they pay annually, but they're also allowed to continue that repayment. And we estimate that that repayment will be complete by fiscal year 21-22. And then also of note, in that DDA budget, we did include a $50,000 allocation for the hiring of a DDA director position. The budget stabilization fund at the end of fiscal year 2019-20 reflects a $2.39 million balance. And there is no request for money to be taken from the budget stabilization fund in this budget, nor is there a transfer in. The difference from year to year at this point is interest earnings that we're making on that money. Back to the one-time contribution for the major road fund of $1.85 million. That allocation will be used to fund improvements on Beck Road between Potter and Pontiac Trail, and West Road between Wixom Road and Beck Road. And just keep in mind, on the major road side, the only revenue that we receive currently to fund any of those projects is Act 51 revenue from the state, which is also used for snow plowing and maintenance and patching and sealing and all those kind of things. So we don't have a dedicated millage like we do on the local road side for major roads. So when you have a project that presents itself, the funding is limited on that side. We're also, like I said, we're requesting 2 full-time positions in this budget for a DPW equipment operator and a traffic safety police officer. We'll once again show, just for historical purposes, that we had our high employment in fiscal year 2003-2004, where we employed 65 employees, whereas this proposal would bring us up to 53 full-time positions. Still a 19.37% decrease over our highest full-time employment. And the next slide is just a history of that trend. The first year that's shown in 2004-05, that was the first year that we reduced from the 65. It's just not, the page isn't big enough to keep including every year. It gets smaller and smaller. So that's just for informational purposes to see the history of how that's changed. The solid waste collection fee that we assess to residents for their trash collection and recycling. We were at $169 last year. We're only increasing that by $1 to $170 for the year. And that will continue to be assessed on the summer tax bill. And we were able to keep it at that level with some new development, new customers, even though we would still see a normal CPI increase under our contract with Waste Management through 2022. Our combined sewer and water utility rates will go from $66.05 per unit to $67.80, along with meter maintenance and special sewer costs that will change. Our residential sewer cap will change from $114.70 a quarter to $126. The residential sewer only customers will go from $76 a quarter to $83.50, and industrial sewer customers will go from $107.50 to $118.25. And of note, as we discussed in probably the last couple budget sessions, with the increased capital improvement needs at the wastewater treatment plant, it has come time that we will have to issue bonds for those capital improvements. And we anticipate issuing about $5.5 million to fund those improvements for the next couple years. And we may even see a resolution as soon as next meeting to go forward and discuss that. Again, we had our contractor do the survey of 30 communities that have commodity sewer and utility rates. We still continue to place on the low end of the scale for our commodity rate and come in at the 3rd lowest, even with our proposed rate that we're showing. And the next slide will just show you those communities in a graph type scenario with ranging from $47.87 per unit up to almost $168 per unit. So we have very favorable rates for our customers. The next slide is about our capital improvement program. We are continuing to do the $965,000 a year annual contribution for the capital plan, and along with a $773,000 additional funding for a pathway at the City Hall complex and replacement of the Habitat Boardwalk. Since the 10-year contribution, and this is just a reminder, is spread over 10 years, it is typical that sometimes the expenditures will exceed what we pay into it that year, because those expenses do fluctuate from time to time. Making up that $2.242 million in improvements that we proposed this year, the Cultural Center comes in at $25,000 with basically some general expenses for partitions and a copier and door and lock and surveillance upgrades. Facilities improvements, which typically is the City Hall facility, is $118,000 for HVAC, door locks, smoke detectors, exit lights, window coverings, and foldable tables for the meeting room in the back. Finance department, $3,000 for a scanner. The fire department has $430 for an ambulance replacement in a storage building to be placed behind the existing fire hall. Parks and Recreation, a large portion of that is the Habitat Boardwalk replacement. We also have in there a share amount to extend the trailway across Wixom Road, and then the City Hall complex pathway that I mentioned earlier. And general operating for $21,000, those are network and computer upgrade cost. Police department for $194,000 has, I believe, 2 police vehicles, some equipment, some in-car computers, weapons, surveillance systems. And Department of Public Works for $297 has a hook lift truck with wing plow, trailers, which I believe one of those is for leaf collection usage, a hot patch machine, and some drain improvements. For roads and safety path and water wastewater, major road improvements this year are proposed at $1,949,500, and that will be for Beck Road, Potter to Pontiac Trail, West Road, from Wixom Road to Beck Road, some preliminary engineering on the Landrow extension and further investigation on that, general road and drainage repairs, and some pavement management. Local road improvements is small this year because we're building some of our fund balance, because as we collect the revenue, we typically save up for a larger project, have those large projects, and then scale back down. So we have $345,000 that'll do some patch repair and some preventative maintenance on some of our local streets. Safety bike path improvements are $642,500. That'll be the CXX property, Wixom Road north of Potter to Palmer, Wixom Road south of Pontiac Trail, and various other maintenance that needs to be done on the pathways. Our wastewater improvements are $3,227,500. That consists of manhole repairs, tertiary filter rehabilitation, and treatment plant upgrades. As I mentioned before, bonding for those improvements of approximately $5.5 million will occur to fund these projects and additional projects that need to be done over the course of a couple of years. Water improvements are $280,000. That'll be meter replacement, distribution, valves, hydrants, some roof repairs on Maple Forest and Grand Oaks stations, and abandonment of some of our well houses. And wow, that came fast.
Yeah.
That's the end of the presentation. And other than that, I mean, we'll look forward to seeing you guys on April 15th at 6 o'clock for some discussion on the budget.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Anybody have any questions or? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we still need to vote on the motion to schedule the budget and setting the May 28th, 2019 as the date of public hearing regarding the budget. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed. Thanks, Marilyn. The next item on the agenda is recommendation to award the low qualified bid for fertilization, weed, and grub control to True Green of Wixom, Michigan, in an amount not to exceed $11,106 annually for 3 years with a 2-year extension option. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Mr. Sickman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This is for the weed and grub control along with fertilization of many of our parks and local roads and cemetery. We did look at this very closely this year. We have opted to take out some of the fertilization. We continue to maintain the weed and grub control as we feel is necessary. Over the last couple of years, we've kind of scaled back, and we've found good results with that. So we're going to continue in that process. And we have utilized True Green in the past. They've been favorable. We opted to go out to bid, and when we did go out to bid, we had a mandatory pre-bid meeting, and there were four different contractors that showed up for the mandatory pre-bid meeting. Unfortunately, only True Green did give us a bid, but we have no problems with True Green. They've operated our systems or have fertilized and performed the weed and grub control for a number of years already. So we feel strongly that this is the appropriate way to move forward.
Okay, any questions? Comments? I have a motion and a second to award the low qualified bid for fertilization, weed, and grub control to True Green of Wixom, Michigan, in an amount not to exceed $11,106 annually for 3 years with a 2-year extension option. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thanks, Tim. Next item on the agenda is second call to the public. I've already read those into the record. So anybody who would like to come up and speak to the council on any item that is on their mind, please feel free to step forward.
Hi again. My name is Mike Dornan, and I reside at 2192 Headingham Boulevard. And what I've got is, I don't have enough for all council members, but maybe you guys can somehow share these. What I'm distributing for the public's information is a GIS overhead at about 2,000 feet, okay, above the Creekside and area development area, okay. So you get a feeling regarding the proximity of the properties, and I'm going to go ahead and make a few comments about the Creekside item this evening. I might be able to afford one more. But I'm on a fixed income now, so I gotta be careful. What you'll see there, give you a little orientation, and I'm sure you know. Okay. You've got Creekside is approximately 30 acres, but there is property that abuts Creekside along the south side of Maple Road, abuts Creekside on the what would be the western boundary, and that property is an additional 10 acres. So whatever you do with approve, and the Planning Commission approves for Creekside in the future, when you get a fit, and I think you will in the future, whatever you do with Creekside, the property to the west will fall likewise, probably with the same usage. So that's something to keep in mind. I was informed that the Planning Commission on March 25th, about 2 weeks ago now, met with the people from Creekside for a conceptual review of their new and improved, according to them, development. And as a result of Planning Commission discussion, at which no public were in attendance, I was able to review the 3-page Creekside new and improved development and proposal, which I'm sure each of you have, and if you don't, you should, in preparation of the meeting this evening. And I also was fortunate enough to review a draft of the Planning Commission minutes, which are so hot, they're fresh off the printing press. And I'll refer to these two documents a little bit in my presentation from time to time. I'm a little bit troubled, but I understand how things work, and that the item was postponed, taken off the agenda this evening. I do happen to believe, everybody has an opinion, of course, and I would disagree with your city attorney's opinion, because I do believe that legislative bodies, such as a city council or a township board, has the rights and the powers to conduct a study session regarding any topic. However, be that as it may, the decision was made to pull the item from the agenda. So, here are my comments. Just short of a year ago, after months and months of meetings before the Planning Commission and the City Council, a rezoning request for high-density apartment, townhouse, and single-family development by Tomco Development was denied for rezoning for all the right reasons. You can get into all the legal reasons why. You guys are seasoned enough, you know how important it is to make the right motion, and you did, to deny that rezoning request at that time. Well, it's no surprise shouldn't be any surprise to anybody. He's returned with a single-family development and rezoning request for smaller lots. And in his own words, from the draft Planning Commission minutes of March 25th, to look like, this is what he said, look at your minutes, downtown houses across from the municipal complex. That's the village center, right? Or the Robertson type houses. This is what he's proposed in his new development. I don't think you should feel, but it would be easy to do so, relieved that he's now coming before the city with single-family homes. This isn't a, oh, phew, this is cool. It's single-family homes after all. It's zoned single-family, right? We can do that. But don't feel relieved that the development is cool now, just because there's no multiple housing, townhouses and apartments.
Mr. Dornan?
Yes? My 5 minutes
I
coming up?
think it's a little over 5 minutes, and I know that there are probably some others that would like to speak, and
All right.
we're not gonna
You
be.
can make 2 more?
Yeah, but
Or up there if 20 works,
we're there.
more time.
We're getting close.
Okay. Anyway, the fact of the matter is, the project is still not in character with surrounding neighborhoods. Come on. We're not that dumb. The rationale still seems to be the same, that economics aren't there. I think he should go back to his sellers, the Wall Lake Schools, if they aren't, and renegotiate the purchase price and the terms, along with the other seller, Mr. Marsh, and see what can work for him. so he can bring in a development in accordance with the current rezoning, or the current zoning. Also, his rationale is that the development is being proposed because of the market demand from so-called empty nesters and millennials. Well, empty nesters and millennials we're seeing across from City Hall here, as a practical matter, I'll tell you that there's multicultural or multi-generational homes and families who have moved into the village center, along with more rental of the village center units, which is something to take a look at. I can go on about the village center, his comments about Robertson and so forth, but I won't because of the lack of time. I hope that I don't have to return and revisit this subject again, but in the event you do find a fit, I would encourage you to not, and I'll repeat it, not extend or connect Theodore Street. In reference to the Planning Commission draft minutes, there was a mention by the Wall Lake, about Wall Lake Schools, how they want Theodore Street extended as a public road to Maple Road. This would be tragic. And I would tell you to take a good look when you plan out this 30 acres to require the developer, whoever it is in the future, to stub roads into the 10 acres to the west, a road at least, like you did with Melania Estates and Cambridge Lane. As well as number 3, provide 2 entrances to the sub off of Maple Road. Thank you for your time. Time flies when you're having fun. And I thank you for your good work that you do in the best interest of everybody in your town. That's all I got.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else like to speak to the council tonight on any item?
Will that budget be posted online?
Please come up and.
Post budget for May 28th, would that be posted online?
Yes, it'll be posted first thing in the morning,
Okay,
along
great.
with a copy of the presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Can we get her name and?
I'm sorry, Miss, would you please state your name and address?
It's Brenda Couch, I live on Theodore here in Woodsum,
The address? is-
3383.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My name's Jameson Schmaltz, 3504 West Maple Road. You know what I'm standing here for, because I don't like that thing across the street. I mean, them little lots, you're putting 2 houses in front of one, and that just isn't right. I mean, don't rezone it. Why does it have to be condensed people? Why do you gotta have so many people in there? And how are you gonna take care of the traffic? This other project up here by Charms Road, I haven't seen anything going on with the road to take care of all that traffic. Is anything getting done about that? Last year, when we went through all of this, there was comments from you folks up here that with the amount of the public that came up arguing against this rezoning, that this would never be brought up again. And here we are, less than a year later. So, I don't know, I guess maybe your word doesn't really mean that much, so we need to have a watchdog here all the time to watch for this kind of stuff, because it seems like you're like slipping stuff in on us. Not a happy camper.
Thank you.
Adam Delfana, 780 Kingsley. Kingsley Drive. I'm nervous. My first question is, may I yield my time, Mr. Dornan? I'd like to hear more what he has to say.
Yeah,
I have 5
I don't know
minutes.
that that's the way that works. We're not a congressional hearing here.
Those in Washington.
Nice try.
I appreciate it.
Nice try, man.
I'd like to hear more.
I gotta bring this down. I'm Rick Van Dyke, 2480 Hittingham Boulevard. A lot of what was already presented by Doran, I agree with. Keep the zoning the way it is, I think everybody would be happy. Putting in little pink houses, not what we need. We've got enough of that over here. Traffic is already terrible, and adding another 107, 108 houses, Mike? 107, it's not gonna help, so, on that. But I do want to comment about the budget. I was at a couple of the budget meetings, I think for last year's budget. I came to the smaller meeting stuff, and I just want to say that I'm really impressed with the budget process of the city. I do, like Mike said earlier, I think the city does a great job with our money, and I just want to say thank you very much for all your efforts and the whole council and everything for keeping our city going well. And I like the fact that we're at the low end of that chart. I think that was really awesome. So there are times you do want to be the low man on the totem pole. And with that kind of stuff, I was very appreciative. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Peter Behrman, 693 Kingsley, Wixom, Michigan. I think where this started off wrong was the sheer fact that most people that are here tonight found out about this through a quick email, a Facebook post, just like last time that we ended up having over 100 people in the room, the same developer, and we had the same conversation that we need to make sure that we're promoting this better. And it was very clear then that nobody in the room wanted to work with the developer and the proposal that he was putting forward. It's disheartening that this would have been added to the agenda at all without more communication, especially if our attorney has even decided that you couldn't move forward with it this evening. And you knew that this created such animosity from the public last time this developer came forward. Why would we even allow this to go on the agenda without a little bit more thought and communication to all of the people that came out to spoke against this development the first time around? Personally, I'm happy to see that the apartment complex is gone. It started over 300 units that he was trying to put onto that piece of property, and now he's down to just over 100. I'm glad to see that. I still think it's probably slightly too many for that piece of property, and it's not going to fit with the character of the neighborhood around it. I mean, you could just look at his map, and you can see he's putting 9 houses that are basically backing up to 4 or 5 houses. So it's going to look weird if that's the development that goes in there. And obviously, we're going to have our opportunity to talk to this individual again in the future if he chooses to come back. The only other thing that I'll touch on that I touched on last year, this is the same guy that didn't cut his lawn the entire year last year, and grass is starting to grow again. And if he's still not going to take care of the property, I really think that this community should look at possibly not supporting him in his development, and because he hasn't showed any kind of caring so far going forward that he wants to work with us in that capacity. I mean, no communication, with the exception of toning down his development now that he said he couldn't afford to do last time around. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak to council tonight on any issue? Within reason, I guess.
Hi, Lori Rich, 50140 Halford Boulevard in Wixom. I really wasn't planning on being here. It was just a fluke that I realized it was budget time. That was way too many years. April was known as budget time, so I did remember. So a couple of quick comments. I do agree with a lot of the comments that were made tonight. I would caution you to at least give them some good weight. Secondly, I'm hoping that Maybe you have a new IT department now that can figure out a way for somebody like me who uses Yahoo to actually receive city notifications. Since the day I left city council, I have never received one communication, even though I'm signed up to receive all of them. And it's kind of sorry in a way that somebody who lives 3.5 hours up north, who's no longer a city resident, has to give me some clue as to what's happening in the city that I still live in and have lived in since 1983 and served on city council for 12 years. So hopefully you guys can figure that out. And thirdly, I can remember back in the day sitting in budget sessions trying to assuage, I guess would be a good word, an individual who was experiencing a little bit of trepidation over perhaps becoming the new city treasurer. And Marilyn Stamper, you've just done a bang-up job tonight. I gotta give you kudos where kudos needs to be given. You have a gift in being able to explain things and real people speak. It's a complicated process. The budget is not simple, it's not fun. Lord knows the countless months and days and hours that you guys put into preparing it. It's not fun for city council. They get that information and they have to digest it the best they can so they can go to these study sessions and appear knowledgeable and up to speed. I spent countless hours trying to prepare for that process, weeks, and actually reached out to other people for advice and trying to understand that to prepare myself. But going through all that, I still felt unknowledgeable to some extent, and the lingo that was slanted and presented didn't help with that belief in myself that maybe I didn't quite get it. You have the gift of the lingo, so you have you're able to at least communicate tonight and explain things, and I can't say it in a better way. Real people speak that you don't feel intimidated to hear the information. So kudos to you. You've come into your own, and thank you so much for believing in yourself enough to take that job way too many years back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to address council this evening?
My name is Andrew Canton. I live at 3524 West Maple. Mayor, council people. My concern is my wife and I just moved here just this past year. I lived up in Highland for 28 years. And we bought a nice place next to Jamie. Nice house. We're fixing it up. We're doing everything we possibly can. Great neighbors. My big concern is West Maple is turned into a drag strip. It's dangerous for me to go out to the mailbox. I see people walking with their kids down the street, and part of that road comes real close to the skywalk. And people don't move out of the way. The speed limit is 30 through there, and I see consistently 45, 50, 70 miles an hour. I see semis coming up and down that road, dump trucks. Now, I know all of them don't live down this road. There's a railroad track down on the far west, far west side or south side, I can't remember. North side, west side. Anyway, I would ask and beg you people to bring this up for discussion in your future meetings to see if we can find a resolution for this, because it's really scary. And when summer's coming around the corner, it just gets worse. And it's just getting worse every day I go out there. I'm afraid to go out to my mailbox. I really am. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. All right, this evening, Kevin Hinckley, 3250 Johanna Ware. I promise, Marilyn, I'm going to write it down with this pen. I'm not going to ask you this again, as all these people as my witness. In your budget, you talked about the sewer assessment, but where are we on the our sewer millage, but where are we on that assessment with the VCA and the tribute?
You mean, how much time do we have left?
Yeah.
2025.
2025.
We're getting
So
there.
is the 2025 based on everybody being assessed $500 or more a year, and then will that bill essentially will be paid in 2025?
Yeah, there might be some ongoing like drain maintenance costs
Right.
that are quite low, but the bond that was took out to originally fund that project will be paid off at that time. So it'll continue to be assessed. I think they range from like mid-300s up to the upper 500s, depending on size of the property. It's based on square footage.
So even with all this new housing and however many hundred are in there, we're still going to be 2025.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
We basically just spread the bond payment that's due over that year, and
Right.
that's all we assess at that time.
Okay. Well, I wrote it down, so I shouldn't have to ask you again. Okay, so that was one of the things I came up here for. So I didn't use 5 minutes for that, but let me start out by saying I'm somewhat disappointed in that, you know, the item was going to be on the agenda tonight, and obviously it got removed that we all seem to be talking about. I was a little disappointed as well that it even came on our planning commission. You know, I think the developer should have been instructed to go back to the drawing board because he was told by council a year ago that we wouldn't look at the type of development he was presenting then, to go back and look at R3 single family. So he does. Then he comes up with this even, I think, more of a horrendous, well, I don't know that it was that much more horrendous than what he did before, but again, it just doesn't seem to match what we're looking for. That being said, you know, as former mayor of the city, I just don't recall this type of proposed development being that part of our master plan. And what I mean by that is extending the VCA. I recall the VCA being pretty much condensed where it is. I don't see where we've made any plans in the future or anything in our master plan to extend the VCA across Wixom Road. So I believe that's a problem as well. The reasoning for my comments that, I mean, the developer, he's not here because he bailed, I think. I think he headed out the door when he heard he was off the thing. That part of his reasoning for making these smaller homes was that he has to get a return on his investment. Well, we're all in business, well, not all of us, but many of us are in business, myself included. You always want to get a return on your investment. But the fact that he bought this property, and if he builds, say, the homes that are like in Hillsborough, the comments that I've heard is that he wouldn't get a return on his investment. Well, that's not our problem, you know. That's his problem. He shouldn't have bought the property, you know. So that becomes another issue. He shouldn't have purchased the property. But I feel that what we've done in the past as a city and the council and the planning and the zoning, that we currently have plenty of what he's proposing housing-wise. Currently under construction, I live in it. I live in the VCA across the street. There's almost 80 more ranch-style homes proposed for what I'll call underneath or east of the Robertson development, right underneath towards, I guess they're actually kind of west of the power lines, but that's 80 more single-family homes that are maybe targeted towards us empty nesters with being a ranch style, so I'm kind of excited about that. But I think we've got enough of that. And I think one of the unique things about Wixom is we've always had a plethora, if you will, of a variety of houses and housing costs and size for everybody's taste, okay? I mean, the one thing we don't have currently going on is a lot of what you see down on back in, say, 8 Mile and 9 Mile, these $400,000 and $500,000 and $600,000 homes. But that doesn't mean that those couldn't be built in that particular property, okay? Because that was part of our master plan. Also, he made comments about how he's helping the elementary school with traffic control by opening up Theodore. That's like hideous, okay? The school doesn't need to have a developer solve a simple logistics problem that they have twice a day out in front of the school. And what that's going to do is if you open up Theodore, all right, we're all people of path of least resistance. How many of you people turn down my street right, which is Johanna Ware, to dodge the train or to come around to the side. We all do it. So I know that's what will happen if we open up Theodore. And then the residents that live in there, they're gonna be coming down here and saying, where's the guy who said they're speeding, okay? They're speeding through our subdivision. I mean, he's got it right out on Maple, they're speeding already. And then they're gonna say, we want speed bumps, and they're gonna put it on council in the city and the burden of the taxpayers to do something about the traffic control and something about speed bumps. So again, a reason for not approving this other than going with the master plan. And I think too, that when you look at people with a path of least resistance and they'll move down there and they'll drive down that street, it also presents a safety problem. And then you have to address that. So I'm in favor of developing that property for what we said and what is in our master plan, which will match the houses that are in the area. I looked at some of the conceptual here recently, and I saw, I'll say, like on the one street there, maybe 5 or 6 homes, and he's proposing 8 or 9 or 10. It's just too much of a cluster. So I say you tell them to go back and come back to you with single family that's like what's in the area. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jose Gonzalez, Gonzalez, 3528 Castlewood Court. Many of us changed our day in order to be here today, and I guess I missed the mechanism whereby we're informed that this thing got taken off the table. I'm concerned about that. And then the next step is, when is this going to come back up again? How do we find out about it? And how does it stay on the schedule? So when we make moves to be here, to represent our city and our interests, the case is actually talked about.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak this evening?
Good evening, Mike Smith, 1692 Norton Creek Boulevard. Believe it or not, I won't talk about any of the development stuff. That's all we have. I'd just like to say I'm excited about the proposed city budget. Adding 2 additional full-time employees, one to the DPW and one to the police. It says we're growing, and it says we're looking at staffing our city adequately. And I challenge the city council to look at the fire department when they do it and make sure we get staffed. There are 5 hours every day that the department isn't staffed. Somebody calls 911 right now, there is no one at the fire station. We will respond from here, which we've done many times. But it's time we staff that department 24 hours a day, and we look at doing it. And I'd also like to add that I represent the Wixom Firefighters United. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greco Fonseca, 2065 Baywood Drive. I also want to talk about the Wixom Fire Department. We try to add staff to the city. All right, facts. NFPA is a rule for firefighter. We need 16 firefighters to fight a house fire, room and content. That means 1 veteran. We have about 13 people on staff on schedule right now. 3 of those.
Excuse me. When I read the rules, the comments are to be made to the council. That's one of the rules.
3 of those are not qualified to go on a call at this time. That leaves 10. 5 of those have full-time jobs. They are paid on call. On their time off, they will respond to a call. As it was said, there was only, right now, there's no staff at the fire department, and that could cause a problem. Lately, trucks have been going out of the bay with 1 person. 1 person. That's understaffed. It takes 4 minutes for a guy to start losing brain cells when they're not breathing. All right? How many people does it take for decent CPR in progress? Not 1 in a truck. Yes, we do have EMS coming from the city, from Wixom quarters. Sometimes it takes 10, 15, 20 minutes. We don't know where they're coming from. We're understaffed in the fire department, and it's becoming a problem. I would hate to have a problem in my house because I live in the city. I don't know how many of you do. I would hate to have a problem and not have a fire department show up, which also has happened lately. If we're looking to increase staff, I will look into the fire department. It's a good place to start. It's hard to get paid on call. Nobody wants to volunteer or be paid on call anymore. Young people, it's hard. Other cities are having problem hiring also. There's lack of people applying for the job itself. So it just makes it harder for the fire department to try to add staff. So I will look into what can the city do to get more people in the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to council this evening on any issues? Seeing no one, I will close the second call to the public. Next item on the agenda are the city manager's comments. Mr. Brown.
Your Honor, didn't have anything in the regular city manager's update other than the usual dates to remember that are provided for upcoming city events. Other than that, I'd just like to echo something that was mentioned by your former city councilperson, Lori Rich, about the outstanding job that Marilyn Stamper has done as your finance director. It's been my pleasure to work with her for 2 years. Top-notch talent that does a great job for the city in preparing this budget, along with the help from everybody in the city that's involved, department heads, other staff people that participate with preparing information. Very proud of the budget and looking forward to discussions at the April 15th and April 22nd work sessions. I don't know if we're going to get down to only one work session, contrary to what some people were hoping for out there, but we're worthy goal. So, that's all I wanted to say. Just congratulations to Marilyn and her staff directly for the hard work that they've done, and all the city staff that worked to put the budget together. I'm proud of it and looking forward to discussing it in the future.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda are the council comments. Mr. Leader.
Thank you. Briefly, for everybody who happened to be here who was looking for the agenda, sometimes things change, be it last minute, be it forward. Nobody's doing anything to intentionally try to hide the ball or to move things around, because what we do want is what we have tonight. And it's rare that there's anybody at the meeting who wants to come up and make comments, but those things that you guys do up there are very important for what we do up here. It gives a very good indication of the public sentiment and what things that you guys are concerned about, and it's important. We appreciate it. A couple of the comments that were made, I just want to address because some things stuck in my head, and just to be clear for everybody. Nobody's against, at least I don't think, even from what the comments are, this particular developer or any developer for that matter. Nothing is going after an individual or taking somebody down for any reasons other than their proposed plan. And the proposed plan that was presented may have been presented out of order, and some of those things, will come back. And I can say that at the last time when this was here, I was the one who made the comment. I said, this will come back again, and for everybody to pay attention, because these things come up repeatedly. Much like the ordinance that's going to be amended 15 times for cell towers. These things and ongoing developments is a habitual thing that will keep coming back. And as far as the notifications, we've worked to get better on that. I don't know where it stands as far as the email blasts, but all of you found out about it. Meetings are televised, to some people's dismay, mine included, but they are online and they are televised, and everybody has the ability to check it out. But one of the other comments that was made, and I think it was Mr. Hinckley who mentioned it, is that there is a master plan in place, and the master plan itself really governs what it is that the city of Wixom has decided wants to be its development for its property. And there was a master plan review that we did last summer, and there were some things mentioned, and a lot of the people here did show up to that master plan review, and some things were discussed there as well. And I think the master plan is going to be presented soon again, and that's another opportunity for all of you to come out and make your points heard as it relates to what the city of Wixom intends to do moving forward for the next 5 to 7 years. So that's another indication. On a lighter note, Marilyn, good job. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Mr. Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to mentioned similar things about the master plan. I also want to thank Marilyn and the administrative staff for putting the time and effort into this. It looks like it's directionally correct. But I also want to commend everybody for coming out today. It is democracy in action, and this is what we're supposed to be doing, right? This is government by the people, for the people. The interesting thing to me was, in past years, we'd hear people come up telling us to cut staff further and cut things further, and it was very encouraging to hear the applause when the discussion about adding resources came up, because I think it is time as a growing city, and we can see through our industrial developments as well as our housing developments that it's time to take a serious look at this. So thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you. Mr. Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can echo a lot of what my fellow councilmen said already. I'll just add, Marilyn, thank you for all your work. Can't wait to get home with my homework. And everyone, please have a happy Easter.
Thank you. Ms. Gromit-Fox?
Well, I would also like to thank Marilyn and her staff. I know it's a lot of work to put this together, and I look forward to reviewing it.
Thank you. Mr. Goschel?
Thank you. I'd just like to welcome all the residents and their comments and thank them, as well as our firefighters, for turning out tonight to explain the situation we have going on at the fire department that's been going on a number of years and slowly getting worse as people are retiring and leaving, and no one, as they mentioned, wants to be paid on call, and we have to compete with full-time fire departments in the area. And Novi mailing our own residents, because their rules are a little bit different about who can be a Novi paid on call firefighter living 5 miles around the city, whereas in Wixom you have to live in the city. So there's even items like that. So I appreciate them coming out tonight to make their comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Beagle.
Thank you. Just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you, Marilyn, for all your hard work on the budget. And I see everybody next on Monday.
Thanks. Just a couple of things, comments. A couple of comments were made on the traffic on Maple Road. You might have noticed in the budget proposal that we're looking to add a traffic officer, which is something that we kind of got the word about going to various meetings and subdivision meetings over the years, and I think that's really going to help the situation. I hope that it does. Obviously, you're not going to the one additional officer is not going to completely solve the problem, but it'll be somebody that's dedicated to that chore, and I think that's going to be a help to us down the road. The notifications item. I don't have any idea why, Ms. Rich, I'm amazed that you don't get these blasts. It's unbelievable, and I think somebody should look into that. I think there's no excuse for that. First I heard of it, that you're having trouble down there at that end of the city. And yeah, I think that we need to, and part of it is us. We need to make sure that we get the word out that these meetings are happening, but the other part of it is that there's a responsibility on the part of the subdivisions and the residents to pay attention to what those things are with these things, that when these things are happening. I think that the point was made that, yeah, I do remember that you can't, this is private property that these people own, and they're going to develop it. It's just going to happen, and you have to be aware of that, and you're going to have to pay attention to when those items come up. And the correct order of things, at least as long as I've been doing this, is that they go to the planning commission, and they go to the building department, and they get the plans submitted, and that's when you have a meeting to discuss this, and that's when the people that are in the area should be showing up to voice their concerns, and we do take some of the responsibility, but you're going to have to take some of the responsibility too to make sure that at least somebody, and I think that we all know who's been keeping an eye on it, but and I appreciate it, frankly, but you're going to have to take some of the responsibility to follow those things and show up to those meetings too. Because that's where it's going to have the most impact, frankly. Marilyn, thanks again for the great job, and all the department heads and the city manager for all the work that put in to preparing the budget. I too think it's one of the better ones that I've seen in the past 20 years up here, and I'm really pleased and look forward to the meetings coming up. Having said all that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Support?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks for coming out.